I want to go across now to people who've been involved in actually looking at how the center manages its finances. Subhash Chandra Garg, this is a clearly political issue. Now, it's also an emotive issue because when you tell someone in Karnataka or Kerala, you show them this data, it looks unfair that you're contributing more. It goes to states like UP and Bihar. Now, obviously, in the larger national picture, there is an argument that you take from the rich, you give to the poor. But outside Bangalore, outside Hyderabad, there's enough poverty. They'll say this is unfair, and now the opposition, which is looking for some issues, trying to capitalize on this. What do you make of this demand? How do you explain the logic of the formula? And how do you think this is likely to play out? Subhash Garg.
So Rahul, there are three kinds of resources which the central government...
Okay, I don't like the audio connection. Give us a moment. We'll try and fix that. Let me in the meanwhile go across to Shankar here. Shankar, you know, we're seeing how these South Indian states, started with Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu next, they're making this issue. In the South, there is traction. I can see the responses. People feel, yes, these guys have a point. In the larger national picture, it makes perfect sense. You take from the richer states, you give to the poor. But there is poverty across Karnataka, across Telangana, which is not incorporated. But any formula is contentious, and the Finance Commission is a highly complex exercise. You say, my tax, my right. You try and simplify what is a very, very complicated exercise. What are you making of the politics?
Well, it's clearly politics, but there is a nub that is there, which is states which have done well have reason to feel aggrieved because the formulation is located still in the 70s and 80s. There has been some improvement in the last Finance Commission where they created some relief for demographic performance. But if you look at the equity picture, what is the story here? Does the Finance Commission's weightages creates incentives and disincentives? Does it create incentives for states or disincentives for states on the basis of the performance? When you look at the GST revenue, what does it reflect? It reflects a state that is growing, that creates jobs, that creates incomes, that creates consumption, that consumption translates into taxes. Now, this aspect is what militates most of the people in the southern states, because when you see what you showed, very well illustrated graphic at the beginning of the program, that shows the reason for the anger. And that anger, again, Rahul, is reflected across the districts, not just in Bangalore. The poorer people in Gulbarga or in other districts will feel that why is our money going there? And that is a normal thing. This happens in families, it happens in corporates, it happens in institutions. The point is that the Congress actually scores the self-goal first before it scores a goal. So this, whoever was the person who said about the secession has done a huge disservice to the cause. Now this issue about devolution should be debated. They could argue it in many ways. I think that the new Finance Commission under Arvind Panagaria should look at the weightages. It should create an incentive for states which create more jobs and better incomes. It should create an incentive for improvement in equity, improvement in income. It is not enough to say that our state has a lower per capita income. I mean, if people start comparing the per capita income, I mean, if Bihar were to present the per capita income of Shevhar, which is under 20,000 rupees, as the basis for the transfer of funds, and Nitish Kumar, as recently as in November or December, asked for a special category state status. So this is going to play out. Every 5 years this happens. And this happens because there is a built-in inequity in the weightages, the way they are created. I think a better way would be to first take the, say, aspirational districts, create a separate grant for them, create a separate incentive process for states who do better in terms of per capita income growth. They should create a special status for states who deal with climate change again. I think the problem is that the Congress party is incapable of putting an argument with any reasonable clarity.
Okay, let Bhavya Narasimhamurthy respond to this.
Parliament? Yes.
Bhavya, now here's the argument that Tejasvi made. Shankar's also making the same thing, that you have to go to the Finance Commission. This is a very complicated exercise, not an emotional exercise. Of course, there is some logic to what can be argued. You can argue at the right forum rather than coming out and arguing on the streets, because you're getting people charged up without them being fully able to comprehend the financial logic behind the decision.
Okay. So I would like to first remind Tejasvi Surya that it was Karnataka people who has voted him and sent him to parliament to represent them. His love for his party has totally, made him blind towards the people of Karnataka. I would like to counter all the 5 or 6 arguments that Tejasvi just. First point, yes, Finance Commission is a constitutional body. It's an independent body. But then the same Finance Commission observed how Karnataka, there was injustice towards Karnataka because they reduced the percentage from 14 Finance Commission to 15 Finance Commission from 4.7 to 3.6, through which Karnataka incurred a loss of 62,000 crores. So the Finance Commission suggested that we get a special grant of 5,490 crores. So when they themselves have suggested this, why doesn't the government agree with this and give us the special grant that the Finance Commission suggested? Yes, they can't intervene in the percentage, the change in percentage and all that is fine. But when the Finance Commission has suggested we should be getting this much, 5,490 crores every year, why haven't they given us that? One. Second, he was talking about the drought and the flood relief. In 2019, BJP government in Karnataka under Mr. Yadurappa, he himself went and asked for some relief for the floods that occurred back then. We never got any relief back then. And now when the drought has happened, a cabinet committee appointed by them comes to Karnataka, they inspect. According to their report, we have incurred a crop loss of 35,000 crores. And they suggested that Karnataka deserves 17,000 crores from NDRF, which we haven't still got. Now let's talk about GST compensation that Tejasvi Surya said. Yes, it was only meant for 5 years. We totally agree. But the reason GST compensation was given was because after the GST implementation, the rise in our taxation, tax collection, reduced from 15% to 9%. Even today, our tax collection is 9%. That compensation was given to the states to cover up the loss that the states occurred, right? But it doesn't mean we have, they stopped giving us the compensation in the month of June of 2022. But after that, we requested them for the compensation because our tax increase, the percentage tax increase is still at 9%.
Okay, so let me go across to Subhash Chandra Garg. Mr. Garg, looked at particularly from the lens of Karnataka or Kerala or Tamil Nadu, there will be an argument that's being made. Zoom out, look at the national picture. States like UP, Bihar need support, which somebody in Gulbarga or Mandya will never fully appreciate or understand or accept. Now, this is a very tricky situation. How do you see the finances and the politics play out from here?
See, Rahul, Finance Commission has a built-in bias in favor of the poor states. Our system of allocation of central taxes from center to the states and then distributing it between the states is designed to favor first number of to the states as such. You get more share from the center to the states for all of them together. And thereafter, for the states, amongst the states, you take it to the poorer, because the basis of...
No, but how do you then respond to the argument that Karnataka is not equally rich? A city like Bangalore skews Karnataka's matrix, makes Karnataka look rich, where there are so many backward districts in Karnataka which kind of get pulled up wrongly because of Karnataka's income.
No, that argument is not really valid, because Bangalore's income is available for the Karnataka as a whole. So even if you have some poorer districts, the higher income from another district is available to the state for the state's work. So that argument.
Now, how is the income available? If people are paying taxes, the money goes to the center. It's not available to the state if they want to spend it in a poorer district.
States also get taxes. No, CGST comes to the state. That is the income of the state. So states' taxes are available to the state's income.
No, but they're talking about central taxes. Yeah, they're talking about how the central pie is divided. They're not thinking about state taxes right now.
That is what I was explaining. Central taxes, since our constitutional system is that the center collects more taxes than what it needs, and the states collect less taxes than what they need together. The most progressive taxes like the income tax and the GST is with the central government, most of them, and therefore this whole system was designed. And population, the poverty, those define the needs of the state. So in principle, there is no real argument to say that the constitutional system should work more in favor of, or should...
It cannot, because this is not just the constitutional system. This is the basis of economic decision making, where you take from the rich and you give to the poor. And the fact is, you tax the rich to fund the economic development of the poor. That is at the nub of all economic decision making.
Let me explain because there is another aspect, which is where perhaps the Karnataka has an argument. There are two kinds of changes which the central government has made in last couple of years, practically in last 10 years, after the 14th Finance Commission had made a recommendation to transfer 42% of the share of central taxes to the state. Number one, the central government, in a way, sort of reworked that formula by keeping the petroleum taxes, the tax on the petroleum products, in the form of cess and surcharges, and also increase the surcharges on the income tax, which is not distributed. So effectively, the central taxes, which should have gone to the extent of 42%, today are only up to the extent of 32%.
Okay, that's a very important point you've just made. Let Malvika Avinash respond to it. Because if the 15th Finance Commission is the basis of all responses from the BJP, the 15th Finance Commission argued that 42% of central taxes, central funds should go to the states. You tweaked it to keep petroleum away, which means that only 32% are actually sent to the states. Now, if you allowed for that 10% extra to go, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, all states would have more money, including states like UP and Bihar. But because you want to keep the control of funding at the center, you are not even doing what the Finance Commission said. Respond to Subhash Garg.
Good evening. I've heard everyone, and it's been a long conversation you've had with all of them. Let me first brief you on the politics that is getting played.
No, let's talk about the finances. I've seen the politics play out all day. I'm talking about the finances. Respond to the specific question you've been asked. The Finance Commission said 42% of the central revenue should be given to the states as devolution. You tweaked that formula from the Finance Commission, which is the basis of all arguments you're making.
In fact, the devolution has been increased to 42%. It has been increased to 42% by the Modi government. Here we have a bunch of liars who are parading in Delhi in the garb of being representatives of Karnataka. Mr. Siddaramaiah is lying, Mr. D.K. Shivkumar is lying, Mr. Suresh is lying, all of them are lying, and these lies are being carried forward by this young spokesman of the Congress party.
No, I'm asking about a point made by Subhash Chandra Garg, who's a former finance secretary, understands central finances far better than any of us. He's made a very important point. I want you to respond specifically, Malvika, to that.
The devolution has increased to 42% is what I am saying.
No, but that's the argument that he's making, that the Finance Commission wanted that it be increased to 42%, but the centre tweaked that. Let Subhash Garg explain it again. The centre tweaked that to keep cesses away, to keep petroleum away, as a result of which the states actually get only 32%. You're not even doing what the Finance Commission said, Mr. Garg. That's what you're arguing?
So that's effectively 42% of the central taxes, other than the cesses and the surcharges, is to be distributed. So if you increase cesses and surcharges, which the government has done, you effectively reduce 42% to what is the fact today, 32%. That is where the states as a whole have sort of come
Let
to
Malvika respond to that specific question, Malvika.
You see, the cess has always been with the center. I think here the conversation is as if it was the Modi government, which is the first government of free India. These have been
Dr.
policies
Garg,
in
was
place
petroleum
for the last
always with the
75
center,
years.
or was petroleum also part of what was distributed back?
Cess was always with the center.
So cesses and surcharges have
We have not
always...
we have not invented these methodologies or
No,
these
no,
policies.
what you have done-
They have been in
what-
existence since independence. This is exactly, I think, Tejasvi elucidated it at quite a length. I'm sorry that we all ceased to understand what he was saying. It's been there for 75 years.
Dr. Garg,
and Siddaramaiah has
Dr.
suddenly
Garg,
woke up in spite of having been in power for 5 years. Before this in Karnataka.
Dr. Garg, so then what's changed? What's the argument you're making?
2018,
Cesses and surcharges have always been part of what the center keeps. Explain your argument, sir.
The government decides how much of cesses and surcharges to be sort of levied. If a particular government increases this disproportionately, today of the excise duty on petroleum products, 92% is in the form of cess and cesses, not in the form of the excise duty or the VAT, right? If it was in the form of the VAT, it would have been distributed. But if it is in the form of cess and surcharges, it's not distributed. So while it is true that the cesses and surcharges have always been there, what you do is you tweak how much of the total taxes you collect in the form of cess and surcharges. If you collect more cess and surcharges, then you distribute effectively less. That is what it is brought down.
Let Malvika respond to that argument. Malvika?
I think we are going back and forth on the same thing. These are matters that have been in place. And there has been so much more that the central government has given the state. Why aren't we discussing that? Why aren't we discussing the manner in which this entire devolution process has gone up by about 250% since the UPA? Why aren't we
but that's
discussing
because
that?
the economy is grown. See, the percentage of devolution will keep growing as the economy grows. It's the percentage of devolution that you have to look at. The quantum of money as your economy grows year on year will keep increasing.
The economy has grown. No. The economy has not grown on its own. The economy has been growing because of good administration, because of no corruption, because the government knows what it's doing and has a certain
Dr. Garg wants to respond to you. Dr. Garg, they're saying we are giving more money. Dr. Garg, she argues we are giving more money, which is true because the economy is growing, more taxes are being collected, more is being given back. So as a whole, the amount that's being given back is much more than it was under the UPA. Dr. Garg.
Where there was unbridled corruption, where there was maladministration, I can go on.
Dr. Garg.
We've seen what happened during 2004 to 2014.
So there are two more.
The economy hasn't grown on its own. It's the government which has ensured that India...
Dr. Garg.
So there are two more resources which the central government controls. One is in the form of the loan limits. So the states can borrow about 3.5% of the GDP. Likewise, the center can also borrow that much. Now, what is happening is for last couple of years that the states have been put under a very tight leash that you can't, because it requires central government's permission. So states can't increase their borrowing.
No, but which isn't a bad thing, Dr. Garg, because many of these states are not being financially responsible. They're borrowing recklessly, irresponsibly, and it's correct to enforce some discipline on them, Dr. Garg.
So Rahul, the same standard should have been applied for the central government. Why is central government borrowing double of what is the permissible limit?
Okay.
And then
Malvika, if states are being stopped from borrowing, why is the center going much more than its borrowing limit? Respond to that, Malvika Avinash.
I will tell you how much lacking the Karnataka government is, which is what...
No, you're not answering the question that's being asked, Malvika. If the states are being stopped from borrowing, Dr. Garg is saying, why is the center borrowing much more than its borrowing limit? Respond to the specific question that you're being asked, Malvika Avinash.
Allow me to give you a few numbers.
No, you're being asked a very specific question. You're being asked, Malvika Avinash, a very specific question. If the states are being stopped from borrowing more than their limits, why is the center borrowing more than double its limit? That's the question the former finance secretary has responded just to this question, Malvika Avinash.
What about fiscal responsibility then? Does the state not have any fiscal responsibility?
No, he's saying
in fact,
the same discipline should be enforced in the center
Mr.
when it comes to
Siddaramaiah
borrowing.
has violated that very Fiscal Responsibility Act, and those are the figures I was trying to give you, which you are not letting me give you. I'll give you those figures. He had promised tax collection of 2,38,410 crores, which in fact is a deficit of 12,522 crores. However, he has managed to collect only 1,61,477 crores,
okay.
which is why
okay.
he's
So
sitting
Shankar Iyer,
he has faced the state of Karnataka.
how do you see this play out from here? You know, this is really a conversation, to my mind, that should be happening before the Finance Commission, because there are pros, there are cons, there are nuance, there's intricacy involved. You can't have this conversation on television. It is way too complicated for that. But you can do these kind of protests like my tax, my right, and you can stoke emotion, which is what the opposition is essentially trying to do, because there are very little other issues. So they're trying to stoke some emotion over here.
Well, there are two kinds of compulsions playing out here. The Congress party and the other parties are facing a tough opponent in the next elections. So they have to find the narrative. That narrative, they have probably found the thing, but messed up in the execution. If they had been a little more smarter, they would have held a conference. They would have got all the finance ministers to come together, talked about a new devolution formula, taken it to the public, and made it part of the manifesto. But that requires a lot of intelligence and lot of patience and lot of diligence. I don't think that is anything that the opposition parties have been accused of in the last 10 years. The other part is that they are also struggling. See, the BJP has leveraged the idea of double engine sarkar. Now the opposition parties are trying to weaponize the double engine story. The problem with India's politics is economics gets discussed 1 month before the election, and then the rest of the 59 months, nobody discusses it. I think this is a good subject. This is a good issue to take forward to the Finance Commission. Let all the southern states finance ministers come up with a devolution formula, make it appealing to the people of the southern India, make it an election point, and then let's see how it goes.
No, and also keep in mind that the whole premise of taxation is that you take from the rich and you give to the poor. You help alleviate the economic and social condition of the poor. That's at the nub of any taxation. That's why taxation exists. You can't. Yes.
It's a process of incentives and disincentives. Now, why do we improve? Why do we have a PLI scheme, productivity linked incentive scheme? Why do we have corporate tax exemption? All of this is to make the calibrate.
So there must be weightages that are put, and it must be accounted for. And of course, demographic performance has already been given a certain weightage of 12.5%. More such weightages can be added for economic performance, but it cannot be that the rich keep for the rich and don't give to the poor. That is fundamentally a flawed economic argument, but they have to nuance and finesse this. And I think, as Shankar Iyer points out, provide a better devolution formula. You're pointing out what's wrong and how you are being wronged, but maybe the opposition could be in power in a state like Bihar tomorrow, or in a state like Uttar Pradesh, or say Gujarat or Madhya Pradesh. It may happen, and if it does, then you'll be at the other end. So you're arguing now because you're strong in the south and weak in the north. What if it changes someday? So these are things that need to be thought out far more deeply. We've had a good conversation, touched upon the important issues. It's not black and white, and I really deeply appreciate the kind of insight Subhash Chandra Garg brought to this conversation, and also Shankar Iyer, Malvika, Avinash and Bhavya Narsimha Murthy for joining me on this conversation. Thank you very much.